Hello everyone! I wish you all a happy and joyful new day. Thank you for listening to Han's story. Amidst the harsh trials of life, there was a woman named Han who quietly walked forward with all her strength and maternal love. Life constantly tested her with loss, misunderstanding, and storms of fate that seemed impossible to overcome. But even in the depths of suffering, Han kept a warm heart, ready to believe in goodness and never let go of her child. Han's story is a journey of tears and hope, of people who seem like strangers, but find each other amid the ruins. There is humanity, silent sacrifice, misunderstandings waiting to be resolved, and above all, the miraculous power of a mother's love, the light that guides Han through the darkness to find a more peaceful tomorrow. Today was perhaps the most memorable day of Han's life, coming and passing as quickly as a haunting dream. After a few rare days of peace, her ex-husband suddenly returned. He came and went like a ghost, leaving behind chaos and pushing Han into a hopeless wandering. From that moment on, Thon's fatherly affection gradually faded, like a small flame extinguished by a fierce wind. As darkness began to fall, Han led little Quinn and Tom, both fainting from hunger, to the gate of Uncle Koa's house. But ironically, the gate was locked from the outside, extinguishing even the last glimmer of hope. In the bitter cold of the night mist, Han could only spread her thin arms to protect the two children. They were too young to face the cruelty of life. In that moment of despair, Han could only embrace her fate, with silent tears falling down her cheeks. But Han was not alone. On the other side, under another roof, the landlord was still anxiously worrying about her and her children. After a tiring day, he hurried into the house and went straight to Thon's room. The anger from the afternoon still burned in his heart because he had seen with his own eyes his son using a rope to pull down Han's house. The truth laid bare before his eyes caused him immense pain and disappointment. As much as he loved Han, he was equally angry with his son, even more so. As soon as he entered the room, he could no longer keep his composure. His voice trembled with anger. "Why did you do that? Isn't she suffering enough?" Although he didn't say it, in his heart he loved Han like his own daughter. That's why, at this moment, all of Thon's explanations were meaningless. Than tried to explain, but the atmosphere in the house had never been so tense. Words were choked in the heavy silence, like a sign of a storm that had not yet passed. Fortunately, Than's mother was also at home at that moment. Standing between her husband and son, she chose to mediate, softening her tone with her husband while gently advising her son, gradually easing the tension in the air. But no matter what she said, the house had collapsed and could not be restored to its original state. Therefore, her father remained adamant that Thon must find Han. Only when he was certain that Han and the children were safe would he forgive her. As for Thon, his heart was filled with worry at that moment. He himself didn't know when that feeling had arisen. Perhaps it was when he heard his father's reproaches, or when he saw his mother's reddened eyes as she advised him to go find Han and bring her and the children back to ease the anger in the house. Without further hesitation, Thon turned the car around and drove into the thick darkness of night. He asked everyone he saw, stopped at every place, weaving through the narrow, dimly lit alleys. But Han seemed to have vanished into the darkness, leaving no trace. Time passed slowly, minute by minute, his heart burning like fire. Under the dim streetlights, the car glided on hopelessly. In that moment, Thon truly felt the fear of thinking about Han and the children, not knowing where they were now, how cold and hungry they must be. That night, no one knew where Han and the children had gone. Thon, his eyes red and swollen, stayed up all night, searching everywhere, hoping to find Han and her children. He told himself that if he couldn't bring them back, he wouldn't know what to say to his father. But as dawn approached, his legs tired and weary, he had no choice but to return alone, carrying a heavy sense of helplessness in his heart. A long, exhausting night passed. As dawn broke, Han arrived at Quinn's grandmother's house. Unlike previous visits when she brought Quinn to see her grandmother and then took her back, this time was different. This time, Han decided to leave little Quinn with her grandmother for longer because she currently lacked the means to care for her child and feared the child would suffer alongside her. Her grandmother looked at Han, asking no questions, silently understanding that the girl was facing a major crisis, but she herself, alone in her old age, was also struggling. She felt both pity and helplessness, only able to encourage Han to persevere, then thank her for the months she had spent taking such good care of Quinn. Han choked back tears and promised that once everything was settled, she would definitely come back to take Quinn home. After saying that, she bowed to her mother, hugging her child one last time. As she turned to leave, each step felt heavy as if she were carrying stones. Han knew she was stepping into a series of uncertain days ahead, with no idea where they would end. As for Dan, he went to work earlier than usual today, hoping to stop by and visit Han and the children. For him, seeing them safe and sound was a simple daily joy, but today, everything felt different. From afar, he could see that the house no longer retained its familiar shape. A sense of foreboding came over him, and Dan hurried closer. The house, which had been repaired just yesterday, was now nothing more than a pile of rubble. His mind went blank. Fear gripped his chest as he thought of Hen and the two children, who could be lying somewhere under the ruins. Dan rushed forward, frantically flipping through each piece of debris, prying up each pillar, his mouth constantly calling Hun's name. But all he heard was cold silence. Not a trace. Not a word in response, making his heart ache even more. In his panic, Dan blamed himself for not making the house sturdy enough, allowing this disaster to happen. He wrung his hands trembling, his heart torn to pieces. But then, at his feet, he stumbled upon a strange piece of pillar. It wasn't broken from the collapse, but showed signs of being cut. The discovery sent a chill down Donna's spine. Hun's disappearance was no longer a simple accident. The house was collapsed, and the person was nowhere to be found. Dan thought of the worst. He turned quickly, jumped on his bike, and sped off to search. The bike shot forward like an arrow, gliding through every street and alley. The first place he went was Miss Men's house, where Han often left little Tom, but there was no news there either. Han and Dan were like two people walking on parallel paths in opposite directions. Not long after Dan left, Han quietly returned to her small house. After just one night, Han had no idea how many people had been worrying about her, and she also had no idea that this was only the beginning of a series of turbulent days caused by her ex-husband. Could Han overcome it all? When those who loved her most, intentionally or unintentionally, gradually ignited the flames of hatred in the eyes of the lost soul who had just returned. Returning to the ruins, Hun quietly found a piece of cardboard to lay down in the corner of the house for little Tom to sit on temporarily. The child's bewildered gaze made her heart ache, but Hun did not allow herself to break down. She rolled up her sleeves and began cleaning up from the smallest fragments, as if picking up every last bit of hope left among the ruins. Suddenly, the sound of a motorcycle grew louder from afar. The person who stopped in front of Hun was the landowner's wife. She had always trusted her husband more than her son, so in the matter of demolishing the house, she believed Thon was completely wrong. Today, she returned not to scold, but to take Hun to stay at her house temporarily, both to help Hun through this difficult time and as a silent apology on her son's behalf, while the truth remained undisclosed. Faced with such sincere kindness, Hun could only silently nod. She quickly gathered a few usable items, picked up little Tom, and followed the landowner's wife back home. At home, her uncle had been in the kitchen since early morning, personally preparing a simple meal. When he saw Hun and little Tom walk in, his face lit up with joy. Seeing the mother and child safe and sound, he felt a sense of relief, as if after so many storms, they had finally found a peaceful corner to take shelter in. Somewhere out there, Dan still wandered the familiar streets, asking everyone he met, hoping to hear any news about Han. As night fell, the streetlights came on, but couldn't dispel the worry in his heart. Every time he heard someone mention a woman who resembled Han, his heart would tighten, but it was always a mistake. When all hope was nearly extinguished, Don quietly returned to the old place Hen's house, now just a cold, ruined wreck. He walked slowly among the broken walls, unconsciously calling Han's name softly, as if afraid of hurting the memories that had crumbled along with the house. The flashlight swept through every dark corner, Dan hoping to find a small trace, a scarf, an old pair of sandals, or anything that proved Hun had been here after the incident. Amidst the scattered bricks and stones, he saw a piece of cardboard neatly stacked in the corner of the collapsed wall. Dan froze. He realized that this was where Han had once sat with little Tome. His heart felt like it was being squeezed. Clearly, Han had returned here, but now mother and child were gone. Dan bent down to pick up a small, dusty shirt, his hand trembling when he realized it belonged to little Tom. He clutched the shirt tightly in his hand, a vague fear rising in his heart. He didn't know where the mother and child were now, or if they were safe. He sat down in the middle of the rubble, his mind blank, but then Dan suddenly remembered what the landowner had said about helping Han if anything happened. A glimmer of hope returned. Dan jumped up, quickly brushed the dust off himself, clutched the small shirt tightly in his hand, and hurried away, heading toward the landowner's house, where he believed he might find traces of Han and little Tome.